The 2020s have been a weird time in the golf course industry. Golf architects are busier right now than they have been for a generation, at least. And yet, it seems harder and more expensive than ever to build new courses. The art of golf course design is thriving. The quality of the work being done is generally very high. But at the same time, a lot of golfers feel frustrated that so many of the best new and newly renovated courses are extremely expensive to play or simply inaccessible. So, from a bird's eye view, we're in the midst of a renaissance. But from a ground level view, it just doesn't always feel that way. So, in today's episode, we're exploring some of these dynamics with Greg Nathan, the president and CEO of the National Golf Foundation. Greg and I are talking about the current state of the golf course industry. I'm Garrett Morrison, and this is Designing Golf. Greg Nathan, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Garrett.
First of all, for those who aren't familiar, you are the president and CEO of the National Golf Foundation. What does the National Golf Foundation do?
I never have to answer that question. That's funny. The NGF is the best known as the independent and objective reporter on the vital signs of golf. So on one side of our business, we're a 501c6 trade association. We are the trade association for every golf-related business, the only organization that works with the business leaders, the leading companies in every vertical. But then the other part of our business is NGFC, and that's where we do private research, marketing, and consulting work for many of the most prominent companies in golf. And so that's what gives us the 360-degree view, is that we study the supply and demand, everything about the golf economy. But then we're also very fortunate to be let inside of some of the biggest golf companies. So it gives us a 360-degree view that a lot of the business leaders like from us.
You provide a great perspective on where the golf industry is at any given point. That's what I get out of a lot of your research and the kind of the writing that you do for the public based on your research. And so talking to you, talking to other people at the NGF is a great way for me to understand where the golf course industry is at any given point. And so that's what we're talking about today, specifically focusing on golf course development, since that's more my focus. I know you do an awful lot of research on other areas of the, supply and demand equation in the golf industry, but I'd like to get into golf course development. As a starting point, I think we should probably say a few things about participation, right? Obviously, participation in golf is the driver of new development and the source of vitality for the golf course design industry. I think everyone is aware that golf welcomed a lot of new players during the COVID years of 2020 and 2021. Has that uptick in participation proven durable?
It is a generationally incredible time right now in the golf business, Garrett. I've looked forward to our conversation about the development side, but there are more ways today than it seems than ever for people to participate in this game. Of course, the NGF reports always about the green grass game, but we also, for many years been the most vocal advocate for off-course participation, especially where someone hits a real ball with a real club with a full swing, so that you can get golf's drug, shot euphoria. So what we've had, if I start at the top, let's just start with golf's reach. So we're at like nearly 140 million Americans who play, watch, read, or follow golf. That's like 1 out of every 3 Americans. Now golf is ubiquitous today in a way that it's never been. So just on green grass participation, we're at about 28 million. I'm still using sort of the year-end 2024 numbers because we haven't released the new ones yet. But 28.1 on course. That's up 16% from pre-COVID 2019. 36 million Americans playing off course in essentially three different ways: golf entertainment, screen golf, and traditional or gamified driving ranges. So we're just on the off course, we're up 55% versus 2019. And it's just an incredible time relative to demand for tee times and demand for golf in general. And we're even getting, when we look at the capacity that's available for growth in public and private, we're really getting to the point where the white space is much smaller than it's been in a very long time, really since, like the mid 80s, I would say. And I can remember being in New York and, as a young man, a young professional in the advertising industry in Manhattan in, 1995, I had to wake up on Tuesday mornings and start speed dialing a golf course in Poughkeepsie, an hour and 15 minutes away. I was speed dialing for tee times. And if people still did speed dialing for tee times, they'd be doing it now. So
Yes.
demand is incredibly strong, and it's such an incredibly exciting time in the golf course business. And we can take that conversation anywhere you'd like it to go.
Well, there are a number of different directions. I tend to be most interested in the green grass side of the equation, but I'm curious before we get there, what different forms participation takes, right? This is a potentially very capacious term, participation in golf. You've mentioned already the various golf activities that people can do off the course, going to driving ranges, gamified driving ranges, Top Golf, etc. In what other ways do you understand participation? What does engagement in golf look like?
I generally would under most circumstances, Garrett, I'd keep a pretty narrow definition of places where I'd hit a real ball with a real club with a full swing. If you were playing golf on a video game, okay, or you step that up and you go to putt-putt or adventure golf, or you go to the next level and you are going to what Dr. Bettis, my predecessor, would have called a stop and swat driving range. That's without the gamification. But the off course that we generally track the most closely is always going to be full swing, real ball, real club, because you can get golf's drug. Because in our study of how you get hooked, and most of the industry that we serve depends on green grass golf, well, you can get hooked by getting shot euphoria. And that's why we track those three methods so closely: the golf entertainment like Top Golf, screen golf, or driving range. Because then you'd be like, I like the way that felt. I liked watching the ball fly. And that's what can often motivate someone to go play in green grass. And of course, there's short course activity, which we think is a great, what we would call a transitional place, where someone could go from being off course only to a less intimidating, more accommodating, less nerve-wracking experience for someone who doesn't play green grass. But I'll give you, this may be a shocking statistic, maybe not. But outside of the 28 million people who play green grass golf, there are more than 50 million Americans who are not currently in that 28 million number who've played on green grass.
Mm-hmm.
50 million who are not in the 28 million number. So that's where we look at the generations and the movements of the so-called pig through the python, for example, like the boomers, that boomer generation that helped to grow the golf industry over the past 30, 40 years. They're just now starting to be at the point where they're playing a little less. So as inventory of greengrass tee times tightens, that white space I mentioned, what an incredible thing for sustainability of the greengrass game that you have all these other ways that people can participate, so that when there is more white space created, that there are people to fill those tee times with the pent-up demand.
In other words, it keeps people close.
You want, yeah, keep them close.
They don't completely separate themselves from the game. I guess at least that's the hope. What are some of the signs that you're seeing that this increase in interest in golf might or might not be sustainable? How do you determine whether any given fad might last? I guess that's probably pretty difficult. But when you're looking at this era that we're in right now, are you seeing signs that this can be durable?
I generally would say, Garrett, our biggest concerns are actually all things outside of our control. The number one threat always to golf is the availability and affordability of water. That's always going to be number one, especially in certain parts of the country. And then I worry, as anybody would, about geopolitical events that would affect any type of recreation or discretionary spending. And you worry about recession and stock market crash. Because as long as the general population, especially the higher end demographic that plays golf, if they feel confident and good in their personal financial situation, they're going to spend the money and take the time and play. You also have right now, you just have so much of, there is sustainability in the game because of how many people are playing away from the course, which was not the case like Great Recession time. Mm-hmm. And when we had the Great Recession, we did see a meaningful decline in the number of participating greengrass golfers. But back then, we didn't have 36 million off-course players, and we didn't have social media doing what it's doing. So there are little things that we see that are maybe blind spots for the game, like a lot of the growth in the number of players that we've seen since 2019, Garrett, has been in less than 8 rounds a year. What we would refer to as occasionals. And that's a similar thing that we saw during the Tiger boom of like 2000 through 2004, late 90s through 2004, was a lot of the growth was in less frequent, less committed players. And when the recession came, they're out.
Yes.
But some of these underlying other positives that we have today, they didn't exist back then.
You have this group of golfers that might occasionally play around at a green grass course, but are also engaged in these other forms of golf or other kind of delivery mechanisms of golf. And that is something that seems to be different about the current era. So we have
real quick. We find those who do both, those who play on course and off course, which is now, by the way, we haven't released this yet. It's pushing 60%. Okay, 60% of on-course players do some off-course experiences, and those who do both, we call them dualies. They play more, they're more committed, they spend more. There are all kinds of signs that those are among golf's best customers.
This episode is brought to you by Best Day Brewing. Best Day Brewing makes really excellent non-alcoholic beers. This is all about having an active lifestyle. It's not necessarily about teetotaling or sobriety. Everyone gets to make their own personal choices about when they want and where they want to consume alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverages. This is just about finding the right usage occasion. So Best Day is great for any time during or after a round of golf. It's great for weekday beers, lunch beers, any activity after the activity. So, say you've gone skiing or gone on a bike ride or a run or a hike, and you want to reward yourself with a beer or two and need to get stuff done afterwards, can't take a nap afterwards. Best Day is awesome for those occasions. You can be cleaning out the garage or working on your car or working in the yard. Who doesn't love a great beer any time of the day without the penalties usually associated with full strength beers? Then a lot of people do what's called zebra striping. This is a new concept to me. They drink a non-alcoholic beer and then a full strength beer. This way they can keep the party going longer, or they can just switch to non-alcoholic beers at a certain point, especially if they're driving or if they just need to keep it together on the back nine of a round of golf. A couple of other benefits besides feeling better in the morning or feeling better after a session of drinking. You get much better nights of sleep, and Best Day beers have about 2/3 less calories than you would usually get in a full strength beer. So here's the deal for Designing Golf listeners. You can get 20% off your first order at bestdaybrewing.com with the code FRIEDEGG20. This offer excludes subscription orders, but anything else, fair game. bestdaybrewing.com, FRIEDEGG20. Check it out. So we have what seems to be a meaningful and reliable surge in demand. Now we can talk about the supply side of the equation. As we all know, there was a major shift in the supply of U.S. golf courses during and after the recession. A lot of courses closed and not that many opened. But earlier this year, the NGF published an article stating that this supply correction is now effectively over. How did you come to that conclusion?
It really has to do with the trajectory of closures flattening out. And we every year since 2006, Garrett, we've had more closures than openings. Every year since 2006. And that hasn't changed. That still happens now, but it's at a much different level. So in 2024, we opened 22 18-hole equivalents. We closed 72. And so that gap, which I think is getting even tighter and tighter, it just doesn't have a huge effect on the net change in golf supply the way it did, in 2010, 2011, 2012. And so what we have now, and this ties into the demand part of our conversation, is that the tightness of demand, the fullness of the tee sheets, the capacity discussion, it's not going to change based on the opening of a meaningful number of golf courses where the people are. Land is too expensive. The cost basis of having a new 18-hole golf course in a major market, it's just what they would have to charge and the capacity they would have to fill in order for that to make money. That's a gamble. That's a bit of a gamble. And so we have a very stable supply side. And now, after the buildup in demand, we got a pretty stable demand side. And so that's one of the things that maybe also the financial, how the financial markets have performed over the last 12 years. It's one of the reasons why you see the development of these really fantastic destination golf locations, primarily high-end private retreats or additions to resorts. And in some cases, you got a disproportionate number of short course construction. And it just means that still, despite the fact there's not going to be a lot of construction in major markets, we still have amazing golf course supply and significant investment in golf course supply. It's special stuff that's getting built.
And I want to talk about the destination sector a little bit later in our conversation, as well as the short course sector. But just staying for a moment on the supply of public courses in highly populated areas. This is something I've heard about from a lot of golfers. It's something I've experienced myself. This kind of cognitive dissonance about the actual state of golf course development. On the one hand, we're hearing that the market is recovering, existing courses are doing better, new courses are being built. But on the other hand, you can't get a tee time at a lot of public courses. And it seems like not that many new, reasonably priced local public courses are being built. I know that the National Golf Foundation has done a study on the supply of public golf courses across the United States, state by state. What did you find in that study, and what kinds of insights did that provide into the kind of supply of public courses nationwide?
On the good news side, Garrett, 3/4 of golf courses in America are open to anyone. And I think that tends to surprise a lot of people. I think the number's like 73%. You also have a situation where we're at the high watermark in history for municipal golf. In the very high 2000s, approaching 3,000 of the 14,000 facilities are municipal. So public golf dominates golf in America. People who live in major cities who maybe are fortunate enough to play a lot of private golf, they don't see that. They don't see what's happening everywhere in America. Now, at the same time that I tell you that, I would say that the great majority of the roughly 2,000 golf course closures that have happened in the last 20 some odd years, disproportionately daily fee. And daily fee just means privately owned public golf versus municipal, government-owned public golf. So daily fee is where the great majority disproportionate closures have come from. We're in the middle of doing a deeper study right now about the last 100 openings and the last 100 closures and stories about them, because we've been talking about it for years, and I'm pretty sure we've said the right things relative to what's been closing and what's been opening, but we're just going a little deeper right now. But so the good news is 75% of golf courses public, high watermark ever in municipal golf. But when supply and demand is at a place where it is now, golf courses for the first time in a generation have had pricing power. And good for them. The golf course owners and operators in general, they don't operate on huge margins, and they've gone a long time where they were under a tremendous amount of pressure because of the building boom that happened between 1986 and 2005, 4,000 plus new golf courses built in America. That would make it kind of hard to compete. But we're not going to see that sort of activity to loosen up the demand for tee times, and therefore golf courses can charge more. And I'm going to be the last person who's going to say that they should take less. One of the things that they're really have made huge strides in is yield management and dynamic pricing. And good for them, because you know what? When golf courses are financially healthy, it's fantastic for the golf economy. And golf courses are only financially healthy because it is the recreational golfer from whom all blessings flow, and they're raising their hand. They're not dialing as much, maybe online a little more. They're making their tee times and they're paying their greens fees. And that makes for a healthy golf economy. It does make for some pricing pressure in terms of paying for greens fees.
It does put pressure on that recreational golfer. And we seem to be in a situation where part of the pricing power of golf courses comes from the fact that there is a persistent undersupply of public golf courses in certain areas where there's a lot of demand for public golf. I don't know. Maybe I could frame this as a difference between the eras of golf that we've seen recently. In the 1980s and 90s, it seems to me that we saw the development of a lot of daily fee golf courses. A lot of new daily fee golf courses came online, privately owned public golf. In the 2020s, we have not seen nearly as much new development, new build development in that sector. It's not as though the demand for daily fee golf has significantly gone down since the 80s and 90s. It's just our ability to provide it as an industry seems to have stalled out a little bit. I know your work on this is ongoing, but do you have any theories about why that is, why we're seeing such a difference between the boom of the 80s and 90s and the action that's going on right now in golf course development?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's the activity level is so modest in the major markets. In the major markets, if you were building a public golf course, generally you would want to do that where the people are. And look, we may end up being shocked and find out that the calculus works based on this level of demand, and someone will find a plot of land in Charlotte somewhere and build a daily fee golf course. It's just those who are investing in new property, new golf courses these days. That's not the trend. The trend is in retreat destination style places that, someone who has the wherewithal and the vision and is willing to go and search for great golf land. Those of us who are just so passionate about golf course architecture can really love that trend about what's being built and how special it is. But if you're looking for a public course tee time in a major market, you're under a lot of pressure right now. And I just don't anticipate that changing in the short or medium term. And anybody who's wishing for that is likely, maybe they don't know it, but they're wishing for recession and stock market crash.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Basically, the only thing that changes this dynamic is a shock to the economy, right?
That would be my general assessment. Yeah.
And nobody wants that. That doesn't benefit anybody, obviously.
Right. Nobody's rooting for that. And look, I'm not going to hide from the fact that golf is more expensive today, and it is. But as I said earlier, I'm delighted for the golf course industry because they've had decades of very difficult times, and what it means when they're financially healthy is that they're investing. They're investing in new Toro equipment. They're investing in irrigation. They're investing in golf cars. They're investing in clubhouse renovation. And one of the other trends, which you didn't ask me about, but it's really part of what's going on, especially in the private club world, is golf establishing itself as third place behind home and work. And that is a great trend for the golf industry. The fact that people view the golf course or the golf club as a place of safety, a place for socializing. And I also would throw out that, as negative as a lot of the tribalism trends that exist in America right now, and a lot of those are really negative, the fact that people want to be with like-minded community, that translates to golf. And I'm not commenting on the political side of it. Let's just call it the social behavior of Americans is more tribal these days, and therefore being at the golf course or the golf club, it's a certain wonderful element of safety and trust that goes along with that. But I also see the downside of, golf started in America as purely a private game, and we're not in a place where we have to risk that. But there's elements of that are some of the negative things in golf's past.
Well, golf as the third place is a very interesting idea. I want to make sure that that's explained to everybody. When you say third place, you're referring to a place outside of work and home that people can gather and socialize and be in person with each other, live with people, right? So many of our relationships now are virtual. And it's easier to be enemies with people when your only relationship with them is not embodied. And so golf's role as a third place is very important for those obvious reasons, and also for the reason that a lot of other traditional third places that used to perform this function in society, the bowling alleys, the public squares, the various other places that people still gather, but used to gather more often, have become less healthy recently. And so the golf course can really serve that function as a gathering place for people to get to know each other.
And what a wonderful analog game this is that we love.
Analog. I like that term, analog golf.
We can build in as much technology as we choose. It's we can use our Arcos, we could use our rangefinder, we can use our different GPS technology to enhance our game. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's a social game, it's outdoors, it's exercise, and it's a wonderful analog game. It provides some relief to the rest of our lives.
So getting back to this question of supply, part of that story is the supply of short courses. So par 3 courses with fewer than 18 holes, often courses that don't meet that regulation standard of a par of 72 and 7,000 yards, and a certain composition of par 5s and par 4s. Short courses of various kinds were pretty hard hit during the recession years. There have been NGF studies that have revealed the extent of the damage that the short course sector took during the recession. What did that damage look like, and why did it happen?
The answer to that typically lies in a couple of things. Number one is short course land is more likely to have the opportunity to be redeveloped. The so-called higher and better use. Like we've seen over the last 25 years, the reduction in driving ranges in America. Like I think at the high water mark, maybe it was 1,500. And we're definitely like half or less than that for the same reason. And that's a similar rationale as to why short courses would have closed, either because the land could be redeveloped or the short courses were not well maintained, were not well invested in. And so they couldn't compete with all of the new building that would come into these markets. So that's the way I would make sense of it. I will say that, of course, you've read things from us that's turned around somewhat. And I'll give you a couple of stats. So this year, up to this point, we've got about 24 openings and counting. We've got time left in the year. We got 24 openings, and more than half are short courses. So that tells you a lot about what's happening. Now, across the street from the NGF's headquarters is the so-called Little Monster, Jupiter Dunes, 18-hole par 3. And I wouldn't say that most of the construction of the par 3s that's happening now is like community public par 3.
Yes.
there's some of that, but most of it, Garrett, and you're well aware of this, is happening at resorts.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bandon has 2 short courses. You got Kohler with the baths. You've got
There's one at
everything.
Stream Song. The chain has recently opened.
Sand Creek at French Lick Resort, the Sawyer at Garland Lodge, Cliffhangers at Big Cedar. It's really amazing par 3 activity, and it's great for the guests, and it's great for the resort owner and operator. And so what the par 3s that are getting built, they're really special. And those of us who love golf course architecture and great golf experiences, we can be really excited about that.
They're very cool courses. They are being presented, though, as an amenity for an overall resort experience, generally. Some short courses have also been built at these destination private clubs that we've referred to a couple of times. So it seems like the model that is helping an excellent short course exist and be sustainable is that it is in addition to a larger experience. That's how it seems to be functioning for the most part right now. But of course, I think everybody wants those local short courses to be available because those serve such an important function. They help onboard people. They help get people into the game. Whereas, as great as the short courses at Bandon Dunes are, as great as I'm sure the chain at Stream Song is, those courses aren't necessarily in the trenches converting people to golf. They are serving people who are already in the fold and going to destination resorts. And so it seems like it's a little bit difficult to make a standalone urban short course work right now financially from the business side.
Yeah.
What are some of the difficulties of making a short course work?
I mean, it's always going to start with the cost of the land, which right now is one of the more prohibitive factors. So you got the cost of the land, cost of construction, cost of operation, and I think I'm not a real estate expert, but I just think the math is very difficult to make work without charging really expensive greens fees. So yeah, this is an aspect of where we are today that is really challenging. And we at the NGF, I mean, we have huge belief in the short courses being incredibly important to the golf industry. And we've done some study, you may have seen from us, where we actually looked at, we'd look at the websites, for example, of every short course in America. We look at their social media presence. And they don't have a lot. There's fantastic exceptions, like the Butler Pitch and Putt in Austin, Goat Hill, San Diego. Yeah. There's such great examples of the vibe.
Yeah, Butler is perfect example.
And so what I'm getting at is the existing par 3s, not the ones that are getting built now, but the ones that are out there now, they need energy. They need to build energy around them. The advertising that they do shouldn't show just a couple of golf holes. They need to show people having fun. This is recreation. This is a place you can go that's not intimidating. The Butlers of the world make it so you could play in flip-flops and tank top. There's food trucks. There's music. They take pride in being the antithesis of golf with all its orthodoxies. And so I don't think we're at a loss here, Garrett, for opportunity to create energy around the short courses that are out there in America and make them more centers of fun and centers of the community for young people.
What you're saying is really interesting because one of the problems certainly facing many short courses is that they aren't taken seriously. They're seen as not real golf courses. If you want to go play a real golf round, you've got to go to
an 18-hole par 70 to 72 golf course, and and you just don't want to compromise and have the short course experience. But the counter to that is sort of what you're saying, where short courses don't try to compete with traditional golf courses. They embrace their short courseness. They say this is a distinct experience. This is a different experience from what you'll have at a traditional golf course, and it's good in its own right. So it's interesting that it's sort of it's not so much a numbers question, a business question, a spreadsheet question. This is sort of marketing right now.
Totally.
That a lot of short courses need to sort out.
The exercise that I described to you earlier about where we analyze the websites and social media presence, I mean, we've done that on a sampling basis for golf courses in Palm Beach County or surrounding where we are here in South Florida. And you'd be blown away by how badly golf is presented in these ways at all kinds of public courses. So if you were to go and Google great things to do in Palm Beach County, it's going to show all kinds of things, and the advertising for it is all going to show people having fun. And then all of a sudden, the first golf course that comes up is going to be on the third page, and it's going to be a picture of an empty golf hole. So golf has a little bit of a ways to go in terms of not shooting itself in the foot from a marketing standpoint. And it's one of the reasons why people have game shame and why people are intimidated. Like, this is supposed to be fun, right? People prioritize things in their lives that are fun. You constantly hear back in the day, why doesn't golf grow more? Now, we don't have that problem at the moment, but why doesn't golf grow more? Well, it's too expensive, and it takes too long, and it's too hard. Well, I've always, sort of bristled at that. And while those things might be real, our research much more shows that it's the intimidation and the fear of embarrassment. And that means that those things don't sound like much fun to me.
This episode is brought to you by the USGA Green Section. Coming to the end of 2025 here, it's a great time to evaluate your remaining budget and start planning for 2026. Data collection is the industry's hottest trend, and the USGA's data collection tools, the GS3 Ball and the new USGA Moisture Meter, will provide immediate impact and long-term ROI. Paired with the USGA's Deacon course management system, these tools collect data and create digital records that give you insights into the performance of your playing surfaces. Start making data-driven decisions to better manage resources and communicate with course personnel. For only $4,000, you can bundle the GS3 Ball, the USGA Moisture Meter, and the Deacon management system. So order today and get free shipping at gsshop.usga.org. All right, let's get back to the episode. So the last aspect of the current golf landscape that I want to touch on is very different from what we're talking about here. It's maybe actually the opposite end of the spectrum from the Butler pitch and putt in Austin, Texas. And that is the rise of destination golf. If there's one sector in the new build golf course development industry that has conspicuously thrived in the 2020s, it's the creation of new destination resorts. So like the ones built by the Kaisers, Dream Golf, and Cabot, and the creation of new private destination golf clubs. Why has destination golf been so vigorous at this time in history?
Let's see. The answer is probably that there have been some very wealthy visionaries who love to play golf, who visit places that other really wealthy visionaries have built and said, you know what, I want to have one of these. And I'd like to go look for a great piece of land to do that. Part of this is totally in line, Garrett, with the trends towards experiences versus material goods. And I mean, at any time we can discuss the hole-in-one I made on a par 4 at a Hoopie Match Club, you know, for anybody who's interested in that. But places like a Hoopie and Congaree, for example, Sandhills, of course, who really started the whole thing. For those of us who love golf in its most wonderful design form on amazing pieces of land, I mean, I think it's as simple as that. You know, you've got visionaries with money who like the idea of building something really special that they can run as a business, and it's a place that they and their friends can go and have an amazing time. And it's, you know, unfortunately, it's not something that everybody's going to get to see or consume because it is primarily private. I mean, I'm looking right now, Garrett, we've got 140 new U.S. golf course projects in active development. 140. That's the most since 2010, when the real serious development period was slowing. 60% of those projects that are in active development are private. 40% of them are in Florida, Texas, and South Carolina. So you just got some really amazing activity happening. Is it going to be able to be consumed by the masses? No. Is it going to help turn non-golfers into golfers? No. Is it interesting investment and raising the quality of golf, the golf as a whole in America? Yeah, it is.
Well, subjectively, this is just my own opinion, a lot of the most interesting golf course architecture is being done in exactly this area. And you can understand why, because these projects, the private destination club, the destination resort developed by the Kaiser family or by Cabot, these are attractive projects to golf architects because they generally get really good pieces of land. The priority has been placed on finding land that is well suited to golf. And then you get a lot of artistic freedom as an architect generally from these clients, because Dream Golf and Cabot have built their brands around outstanding, prestigious, well-regarded golf architecture. And then when you're building a destination private club for a client who's trying to appeal to golfers, you know, a relatively small subset of golfers that is generally pretty well informed about golf architecture, you get a lot of freedom there as well. There aren't a lot of restrictions on what you can build and how you can build it. And so a disproportionate amount of the most interesting, boundary pushing golf architecture has been done in these contexts: the destination resort and the destination private club, which can be frustrating to people because these are pricey, high-end, and sometimes hard to access experiences. And yet, a lot of these places, most of these places, I would venture to say, have become successful businesses. Mm-hmm. Bandon Dunes, very successful business. Sand Valley, very successful. And Dream Golf is continuing to expand. In the 2020s, they have founded a lot of new resorts. The destination private clubs that I know about, their balance sheets look really, really good. And so clearly there is a base of golfers right now who want this stuff and who are willing to pay a premium for this. Do you think there is a larger story here about
a change in how golfers spend their time and money? You mentioned the kind of experience economy, the shift toward experience that has happened. Is that part of this story?
100%. I would, based on what we're seeing also in terms of the highest end golf resort bookings, and a year in advance booked up. Like this has not been normal in America. So it is a trend towards experiential. It's a trend towards retreat type environments. Once again, sort of a trend towards the analog, which, those of us who are fortunate enough to play at some of these places, there's a magic to it. And I'm just looking right now, Garrett, at Florida. Okay. Florida, not exactly known for its amazing golf land, because of the lack of elevation change. Florida has more golf courses than any other state in America, over 1,000. But Stream Song building, David McClay Kid building a 5th course of Stream Song. Tom Doak at Old Shores, High Grove, Fry Straka at Miyaka. Ooh, that there you go. That rhymes. It's beautiful.
It does. Yeah. I wonder if that was intentional.
The Ranch, North Course at Apogee, Old Charlie, South Carolina, Old Barnwell, 21 Club, Old Sawmill. Kiwanu.
Those are in South Carolina, the ones that you mentioned. Yeah. Not that far away.
I'm just looking down the list at Florida, South Carolina, and Texas, Wild Spring Dunes, Travis Club, Laura Loma, Childress Hall. I mean, these are wonderful for those of us who love golf course architecture and playing golf on great land. And it's clear that those golfers in America who have the wherewithal to do this travel, it's just, it's an embarrassment of riches. And from the standpoint of the types of places we can go for these analog golf retreats with friends, it's extraordinary.
Do you have any working theories about why it is that so much of the action is concentrated around specifically Hobe Sound in Florida and specifically Aiken in South Carolina? There are certain hotspots. It's not all happening in those two places. And then
Right.
there are a variety of spots in Texas that are seeing a lot of activity. But why the Southeast?
I mean, speaking of Hobe Sound, which is 40 minutes up the road from where I'm sitting right now, it's a lot of ranch land, relatively flat for the most part, but ranch land that relative to the other land in the area is highly affordable. Relative. And that building has a lot to do with the migration of older affluent folks from the Northeast moving down here.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a bit different. While those are still sort of destination club oriented, the ones in Hobe Sound, some of them have real estate, and they're really for people who are either want a second or third home or want to retire there. I think that's a little different than what's going on in Aiken. And I just think that's more driven by they're finding great land there. And perhaps they're thinking, I can make a tremendous amount of money during the week surrounding the Masters. In a totally different dynamics between those two things.
Yes, I agree. I think Aiken is so interesting because, one, you have the attractive proposition of being 30 minutes from Augusta, Georgia. And so every year, you're going to get a deluge of people interested in playing your excellent golf course. But then you're also an hour from Columbia, South Carolina. You're 2 hours from Charlotte. You're about 2 hours, I think, from Charleston. And these are growing cities. These are cities that are taking on a lot of similar migration to what you're talking about around, Jacksonville and various cities in Florida. Those cities are growing too. But I think Charlotte, Columbia, Charleston are growing more in the kind of middle-aged, young family areas, because you just have a lot of kind of well-off folks who are relocating to those cities and working often in their financial sectors. And so a club in Aiken is very attractive because you can get away for a weekend, go stay in your place out by Aiken, and enjoy your club there. It's almost as if Aiken is becoming the Hamptons of some of these growing Southeast cities. And so that's maybe part of the reason that some of this stuff is happening there. And there are parallel reasons that we're seeing development in Florida, but it has to do with the fact that these areas are growing and taking on a lot of people who have the money to join another club, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super excited to go and visit some of these places. They will be what they were intended to be, destination trips. But it's a really interesting dynamic. Certainly, those properties have their own risks involved, and they're banking on, just putting two and two together. They're banking on the fact that even if we had a recession, certain things that challenge the feelings of financial well-being of huge swaths of Americans, that those folks who have the memberships are somewhat insulated, from some of that recessionary activity if it were to happen. But there's a natural risk associated with those properties that if it's these are problems of only a very small group of people, but if that's my fourth or fifth or sixth club,
what's the first to go?
Do I start to think about that in the case of a stock market crash or meaningful recession? But for the most part, those just add to the quality of supply. They don't really change the supply and demand dynamics of the golf economy. They're jewels. They are special jewels and special destinations, but they're not. I'm very. The NGF often would say, Garrett, that all golf is local. Well, there's a meaningful exception to that theory.
Right. So, Greg, the National Golf Foundation does a lot of interesting work. You mentioned that coming up, you're looking at the last 100 closures and last 100 openings. Are there any other areas of research that you're particularly interested in right now? I wonder if there's a preview of the stuff that you're doing right now that you can give us.
We're 3 weeks away from our annual symposium, and we always share that's the first presentation of the new state of industry. And we're also working on a really amazing strategic report with McKinsey. So the NGF twice in our history has collaborated with McKinsey to look at the future of golf. In 1988, we did the first one with McKinsey, and in 1988, golf was significantly undersupplied. So at that time in 1988, if there was a one sentence that comes out of that report with McKinsey and the NGF, it's, if golf's going to grow, we need more golf courses. Then we did, in 1999, a second report with McKinsey. And based on the huge building boom that happened in the late 80s and 90s, when we got to 1999, we were like, woo, we already had put a yellow light up on development, and we were getting ready to put a red light up on development. And at that time, it was, okay, we've got supply, but supply, unfortunately, the boom built a lot of homogeneous stuff. Okay, expensive to build, expensive to maintain, high greens fee was built. Not necessarily what you need to grow, to turn golfers into non-golfers. And so there was a disconnect between the golf being built and whether it actually grew the game. And I really don't like that phrase, grow the game. It's creating golfers from non-golfers. So the last one, 1999. So now in 2025, 25 years later, we were undersupplied in 88, we were oversupplied in 99, and now you could argue we're at equilibrium. So that I'm really excited about. New state of industry. It will be different than it's been in the last several years, just in terms of some new developments that we've seen. Most of them to the positive, but I've already hinted somewhat to when you think about growth, where's it going to come from?
Yes. What do you do when there's equilibrium? What's the imperative?
So that white space, that shrinking white space for green grass growth, that's an area that we're looking at very carefully right now. And so the SOI, the state of industry, is going to have certain new things that our constituents haven't seen before. And then the McKinsey report, bringing in all of their really high-level insights on American consumer behavior, tied with NGF's unique golf specialty perspective. So I'm really looking forward to that. And obviously after the symposium, for those who are members who support the organization, and some things that we put out for free to the entire industry, we're going to have a lot of new content.
I guess I'll have to have you back on at some point soon.
I will say yes to that.
As always, Greg, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Great being with you, Garrett. Thanks so much for the conversation.
This episode of Designing Golf was produced by Will Balsam. Thank you, Will. If you've been liking this podcast, I can just about guarantee that you would love what we're doing in Fried Egg Golf Club. That's Fried Egg Golf's membership. Go to thefriedegg.com/membership to see what it's all about. We do a lot of exclusive golf architecture related content in there, the kind of stuff that I don't think you'll be able to find anywhere else. We're also going to get my new colleague, Kevin Van Valkenburg, involved in some club content. So that's something to look forward to. So join us in the club. We're having a lot of fun there. One thing actually that I want to mention that we're doing right now is running a hole design contest. The winning design will actually get built at a new short course designed by Andy Staples in Minnesota. So if you've been thinking about entering this contest, but just putting it off, now is the time. The deadline is October 15th at noon, and we're going to go from there pretty much right away, hold a hangout, a virtual hangout with club members and look at some of the designs and make some decisions on finalists. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hope you enter your whole design, come up with something creative, and we'll take a look. All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back again soon with another episode.